Hello there. This is the second video focusing on the Ruertu tablet. There's no particular name for this tablet, just the manufacturer name. In the first video, we did an unboxing and we looked at a little bit of the hardware. And then on this video, we're going to focus on a visual tour. So we'll go into the UI, look at all the, or most of the features related to the device from a software perspective. One thing I want to note before we continue, and I mentioned this in detail in the first video, so you'll want to go check that out if you want to hear those details. But this device was provided to me by the manufacturer, and I'm not required to send it back. So this was basically given to me. Now, there are no contracts or agreements between me and Ruertu. I'm free to do a review as I always would, and I fully intend to do that. But I want to call that out for full disclosure. And again, if you want to hear more about that, I go into a little bit more detail in the prior video. But in this video, we're going to focus on the visual tour. And then we'll close out in the next video. We'll start to actually do more of the review aspects of this device, including the battery life analysis. We'll look at some other features a little bit deeper and a little bit more critically. And then finally, the fourth video will be the full formal review. So this video as a tour is really just meant to kind of show what features are available. And generally speaking, I'm going to withhold any opinions on them. I'm just trying to show them off here. Okay, now just before we turn this on, I did want to highlight a few things regarding the hardware that wasn't covered in the previous video. And I didn't show off the sides of the device, so I just wanted to call out that right here, at the top is a fingerprint sensor, and that's also the power button. There's a light indicator next to it when you're charging the device. There are two speaker grills on the side. Oh, there's also 4 microphone holes on top. Down below, there is a USB-C connector. There's also a slot to add additional memory via a card, and then there's nothing on this side at all. And as I mentioned before, there are no magnets on the device. I tried a stylus with a magnet and it didn't attach on any of the sides. Okay, so that is the review of the hardware. Let's go ahead and turn this thing on and start doing our tour. Okay, let's start looking at the home screen, and there's a couple ways in which this can be aligned. This is one of them, and basically it's just an app drawer, and you can see there's 2 pages of apps here. There's no ability to do widgets. You do have the ability to sort the apps in various ways. And you also have the ability to freeze certain apps from running in the background. This particular icon above doesn't actually have any operation in this particular mode, but it will in the next mode. This is a pretty straightforward mode, and it does a nice job of highlighting the colors of the apps and kind of the Kaleido 3 experience. But there is another view that this device has. And we'll go into Settings and Home Screen Style. And we'll click on Office Style. So we were in Tablet Style. We'll now go to Office Style. And Office Style has a different layout. You can have the apps appear. And you'll notice now that there's only 1 page of apps. The reason why that is some of the apps that had appeared here now only appear here on this kind of shortcut bar, if you will, which shows a list of different applications that you can kind of click on and get quick access to. So just a different way of interacting. So instead of clicking on an app, you click on the shortcut, which is essentially the same thing. This sidebar is highly customizable. We'll get to that in a second. Now, this button does operate. It's basically an app drawer, like so. And in order to return back to the screen, we hit the home key, like that. Let's go ahead and go into Settings, where we can see where we can make changes. So this item called Menu Management only appears when you're in this Office home screen style. So we'll click on that, and you can see right now all the things that are listed in the left bar are clicked on, but we can either turn them off, or we can go through and add pretty much any application we want onto that side. So you can fully customize what appears on the left side. And then you can also customize to a certain degree the look. What we were looking at was the tightest look, where you had the most icons visible on the screen at one time. Let's go to the opposite extreme and take a look at what that looks like. As you can see, a lot more white space, etc. So it's a fully customized left screen. You can put all your favorite applications or most often used on the side. You can eliminate the ones you don't want. You can put literally everything over here if you want. And that's kind of the range of the overall home screen style. Let's return home. I'm actually going to go ahead and by default go into the tablet style for the rest of the review. All right, so our attention now focuses to some of the buttons here on the top bar. And of course, here is the home screen button. That'll always take us to our default home screen. Here is the E-Ink Center. Let's go ahead and click on that. And there's a number of features. These are the general features you'll see no matter where you are in the device. If you're in an app, you'll see another tab as well. But let's quickly walk through what we have here, and then we'll go into an app and take a look at the full range of features here. So first off, on the very top, you have 5 what are called refresh modes. And the basic idea is that modes like HD 256, HD, and Regal all emphasize the quality of the image over the performance of the device, where normal, fast, and extreme are more about how the device feels and operates, and cuts back a little bit on the quality of the images. And the best place to see that is with photos. We'll go into Google News and we'll basically show that difference. There's not a tremendous amount of difference between these 3 options and these 2 options. In fact, in most cases, I can't particularly tell the difference, and we'll illustrate that as we go into the app. There is this button for full refresh frequency. This is basically a response to ghosting. So if you have ghosting that is more prominent that you'd like it, one option is to click on this frequency and it will flash the screen to try to remove ghosting. So notice when I go to 1 on this, the screen flashes. That's the behavior basically that you're triggering, and you can select how often that occurs, anywhere between 0 and 50 times, touches or swipes of the device. There is this auto clean function that is also designed to kind of eliminate ghosting, and it does a pretty good job. This is available in the normal and extreme modes. I'm not sure why you would turn this off in those modes. I don't know what the downside of that is. There might be a battery impact. But by default, from the rest of this video, we'll leave this on. In fact, unless otherwise noted, we'll try to keep the refresh mode in normal with auto clean on for the rest of this video, and future videos. If you were in HD or Regal, then you have access to these modes and sliders. These are all just presets. So if you click on default, it goes to a certain value. Magazine actually is the same value, strangely. And then comics is different. And then custom is anytime you move these sliders, then it goes on to custom. This custom does not memorize what you have. So if I go back to default, for example, and I click custom, it doesn't do anything. So we'll take a look at what those sliders do as well. So why don't we go ahead and go we'll go into Google News in this case, which I think is a good example to play around with. And this is how the app looks when you download it from the Google Play Store. So this is basically the default look, if you will, on this device. Now let's go ahead and go into the E-Ink Center. And now you'll notice that there's also this app optimization screen. And if you click on that, you have other options in addition to what we saw previously. And perhaps the most important is this DPI setting. So currently we're set to 300. Why don't we go to the lowest value and then see how that impacts the application. Okay, so you can see the images. We now have 4 images across as opposed to 2, and the text is very small. So that's pretty quite apparent impact of that. Let's go ahead and scale this all the way to the top. And now we have one image on the screen, and the text is obviously a lot larger as well. So let's go ahead and kind of shift up the screen. So notice how it's it's flashing and it's a little bit jerky as we're motioning. That tells me I'm in one of the HD modes. So let's take a look and see which one. Okay, we're at HD 256. So let's quickly go through these modes and take a look at what happens in the image. So I'm going to go from 256 to just regular HD. Okay, not really much of a change at all, if any. Same with Regal. Okay, but what if we go to normal fast? Very different. You see the image got lighter and it also got a little less detailed. If we go to extreme, probably actually the best way to see this, the detail aspect, is to go into another app. Let's do that real quickly. We'll go into OneNote. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on front lighting, so this might be a little more apparent with front lighting on. And we'll refresh the screen. Okay, so notice this purple bar up above, and you can, if you look at it, you can see kind of a graininess to it, right? So if I click on the E-Ink Center, I'm on the normal mode. Let's go ahead and go into HD mode. See, it becomes a much more solid image. That's a great example of the difference between the two. So HD has a little more apparent pixel density to the color, and it also has a darker color than normal fast mode. But I mentioned that normal fast mode has better, it's a little more better performance on the device. So let's take a look at that in action. So currently we are in normal mode, and if I scroll, it's fairly smooth. It's just a little choppy, but not too bad. Pretty responsive to my touch. But as we saw earlier, if I go to a mode like HD, then much choppier as a result. Okay. So while we're in HD, why don't we go ahead and take a look at what these different sliders do. Let me refresh the screen there. And we'll look at this image. So let's go ahead and turn dark enhancement down to its lowest level. Okay, you can see the image is quite light. If we turn it to the highest level, very dark. We'll scroll that down to 0. We see vivid enhancement at 100. Let's see it at 0. Okay, and then color brightness, which is currently at 0, let's put that to 100. So you get a sense of how these different sliders are affecting the image that you're seeing. Again, all these sliders and these presets are only available in these 3 top modes. However, if you go into app optimization, and let me set this to 0 just to baseline it. If you go to app optimization, these settings will all affect regardless of the refresh mode. So let me go ahead and just put some of this text in the forefront. So we get a little bit of image in the text. Very good. And then we'll go into app optimization, and now we've got contrast setting. So it becomes very dark, and that's independent of the refresh mode. We'll go down to 0. Icon color, if I go to 100 or 255, then the icons basically disappear, as do the images in this case. And then some of that comes back. There we go. Refresh the screen. And background color, oops, let's get that to 0. Background color at the top level also is making some of the icons go away. So kind of interesting impacts there. And I do not know what text enhancement does. Let me go Let's get our icons back there. There we go. Here we go. We'll click on text enhancement and maybe a little bit darker. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, just a touch darker, if you notice on the header, by clicking on text enhancement. Okay, so that's basically the E-Ink Center in action. The app optimization almost always defaults to 300. And so this is what it looks like, but in each app you can set this separately, and I particularly like maximum. I just find that to be a better experience. And this is also similar to how Books is set up. Normally this is the normal size that you would see if I had the Google News app on a Books device. It tends to default to a larger font size as well. Okay, let's go ahead and go home. I'm going to go ahead and turn off front lighting. We'll come back to that. There's additional icons. There's this kind of app icon, which is all the icons that are active on the device. And I can either go in and close individual applications, or I can click on this little dustbin and clear out all of them. We've already talked about this particular icon, which has no utility now that we're in this particular view. We also have the settings button, and we'll go into settings in further detail in just a few moments, so we'll skip that for now. This kind of downward arrow icon, you can press this for the drop-down bar, but you can also swipe down from the top anywhere on the screen to achieve the same result, like so. So we'll go ahead and come back to this in just a second, but finishing off the top bar, we have a back button here, and then we have icons. Here is the day and time, Wi-Fi and battery level. Generally these are not interactive, but if you click on the Wi-Fi one, you do get to see, you go right into settings where you've got your Wi-Fi settings. So that one is interactive. Okay, let's take a look at that drop-down bar. So we're going to start off, you've got the date and time above, and then you have toggles for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and the dark means that that's active, and white means it's not active. Then the next section below, we've got the E-Ink Center, and this is basically the exact same functionality as that E-Ink Center is. In fact, this process management over here is also exact to that, so two ways of getting to the same place. There's this icon here for global handwriting, and this is something we'll explore in more depth in the next video. But basically, just to show you kind of what the application does, if we turn on global handwriting, there's three different modes that are available. One is where you can use handwriting in conjunction with an application that allows for pen input, but isn't optimized for this particular device. So basically, you can write on the device, and then it translates it into that app. That's the idea. There's reading mode, where, for example, you can take an app like Kindle or Kobo, start reading a book, and you can write annotations in it. That gets saved into a notebook, just the annotations, not the book itself. So there's that function. So that's in apps that don't allow for pen input. And then there is this picture mode, which is basically whatever you've got on the screen, you can write on it and then take a screenshot of that. And we'll see the screenshot icon in just a second. And then it saves that onto the device. There is the ability to use 4 different pen styles, which is pretty much the same as their Notes application, minus the highlighter. You have some eraser options, color range, and line thickness. So that's basically how that operates. And again, we'll look at more depth in how it actually functions next time. There's split screen functionality, which is pretty solid. Let's go ahead and go into Google News, for example. So we'll go into an app. And then if we scroll down, or rather bring up our bar, we'll go ahead and do a split screen. We'll start it. And you can see that first off, it's going to align vertically because that's how we're currently aligned. However, it is possible to do it horizontally. We'll show that in just a second. But on your second screen, you have 3 options that are available. One is there's a note-taking app. This application is specific to the split screen mode. It's kind of a subset of the functionality that's available to the application. There you go. Overall. So for example, if I click on pen style, there's only line thickness. You don't have a selection of pens. That's different than the normal app. You do have a range of colors, although not quite the range of the normal application. You have the ability to erase, but the only eraser you have is, erasing like that. You don't have the ability to do an area. You can delete the page. You can put a template in, you can rename it, or you can save it as a PDF file. All these features are available in the Notetaking app, but there are things in the Notetaking app not available here. So that's what I mean by a subset. And we can get out of this. Like so. In that case, you see with the Notetaking app, it defaulted to a horizontal, but you can actually put any apps here and also go to a horizontal view as well. You can do audio notes, pretty straightforward, and then you can do a number of applications. And here's the list of most of them, with a couple more available there as well. So most, not all, but most applications you can use in the split screen mode. And you can also swap the position regardless of whether you're vertical or horizontal, like so. And you can get out by exiting. So a fairly fully featured split screen function. Okay, let's keep going on the menu. So we have the ability to do a screenshot. So if I click on this, it will take a picture of the screen. I can either get out, I can trim it, I can save it. That's what that icon does. Or this is a share icon, but actually what this means is you're backing it up onto the manufacturer's cloud service, which I don't have. I have not created an account, so I don't have that ability, but that's what that function would do. You do have the ability to cast to mirrorcast. So for example, if you had a receiving device like a Google Chromecast, then you can click on this and then whatever you do on the screen can be projected onto another screen, a TV, another computer, however you're set up. You have the speed up option, which also releases some RAM, like so. You could record the screen. That's pretty straightforward. Basically, you click on this, you say go ahead and do it, and then it's just starting to record, and whatever I do, it's going to create a video and we'll save it onto the device. And that's where it will put it in terms of their folder structure. Okay, there's airplane mode. There's touch mode, obviously, so you can turn off touch. So see now I won't work. I'll have to use my pen, like so. Let's take it off touch mode. And then there's power management mode, which is a shortcut into the settings menu. And we're going to go into that in just a second. So we're going to hold off on that for now. And then finally, screen rotation, as we saw, but in split screen, but you can also set this like so. It's not a particularly sensitive screen rotation. In fact, I'm trying to... Let's see if we can get this back. Seems a bit stuck. Let's wait something. There we go. Okay. It's been more responsive, generally speaking, than that, but it did. There has been some times where it's a touch sluggish. That was a good example. Let's scroll down and get rid of that. Now down below that section is another section for front lighting. Currently front lighting is off. There are a number of presets. So we have off, we have daytime, which is a little bit of cold lighting. We have night, which is more cold lighting, and bedding, which adds some warm lighting to the mix. And this is different than the preset we saw with the Ink Center, does remember whatever you set the bars to last. So I had set the bars to full on both, and it remembers that. If I make any changes to the sliders, whatever the last change I made to the sliders is what the other button will remember. Finally, you've got your music volume. Basic slider, you can mute by clicking on that little speaker icon, and then you can actually change the volumes of the various audio, for example, the overall, the alarm, and notifications, and so on. And that's the drop-down bar in action. Okay, so the tour now takes us to the settings, And there's a number of ways to get there. We can either use this kind of gear icon on this top bar, or we can use the application to get there. All your settings are here aligned on the left side. It starts off by default talking about the device, so we can see that this device has a 2.3 gigahertz octa-core processor, 6 gigabytes of RAM. We see where we stand with storage and what the general resolution is. That's the black and white resolution, color being half of that. If you have an account with Ruertu, then this is where you would log in. Here's where you would log into your Wi-Fi network. We've actually seen that. The Bluetooth options are pretty standard. You can turn it on or off, just like you can on the drop-down menu, and then any devices you can connect to accordingly. If you're having issues with the stylus, where when you write, there's a disconnect between what you're writing and the screen, then that might be solved via calibration, and this is where you would find that. There's an option here that's aligned with the stylus calibration called page key definition, and I'll show that to you, but to be honest, I'm not clear what this governs. I've tried a number of things that I thought might be the case, but yeah, I don't know what this does. So if you happen to know what this is supposed to do, please put that in the comments. That would be very helpful. Next up comes, this is our battery options, and we've got sleep time, which has a number of possibilities in terms of time frames. And this is basically what would turn the device into a sleep mode that deactivates Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and it saves a little bit of battery, but it keeps the device in a state of readiness. So if you click on the power button, the screen comes right up. That's so I actually have it disabled, however, so mine will only shut off when I either close the cover or click on the power button. And shutdown mode is when this device literally turns off and completely shuts down. The good news of that, if you have it activated, is it will mostly preserve the battery life. You have a very slow drain on the battery when the device is shut down. However, if you then have to turn the device on, it's about 45 seconds to go through the boot up sequence. So it's a little bit annoying. But so if you're using your device intermittently all the time and you want to preserve battery, then this would be a good option. But if you're using the device more daily, then you probably would select never, just like I do. Now, I've selected disable and never for two reasons. Number one, I generally use my devices that way. But number two, for battery testing, that's how I do that on all devices. So I turn off these battery saving options so I can have an apples to apples comparison. Under power management, you have some options. So this is what allows the device to close when the cover is closed. The device does not, if it's on sleep mode, does not turn on when you open the cover. So only when you close the cover. You can also turn off audio when you go into sleep mode, or not toggle that off. And then they have this delay option. So when you go into sleep mode, how long does it take to turn off Bluetooth and Wi-Fi? Those are your examples there. Finally, there's this low power mode, and there's a performance mode and a power save mode, and you can see the text descriptions there. I have this set to power save mode, and that will be the case through the entirety of the review. Performance mode, I have not noticed a difference in performance, but I do notice a battery drain difference. So I see the negatives, but I don't see the positives. And so for that reason, I'm selecting this mode. It's a little unusual. So normally, as I noted, I would turn off any type of power saving options. But in this particular case, I think this is the right default option for the device, and I don't see why someone would select this option. So that's why my battery testing will be done with this power save mode on. Hopefully that made sense. We've already looked at home screen style. Let's take a look at the different languages that are available on the device. And I'll go ahead and scroll through. There's 5 pages of languages that are available. And these are what they are. So quite a bit of options. Obviously, I can't speak to the quality of the different languages. I only know English. We have the system font size, and here you can see from this paragraph the differences. So you can go to small, and it makes the text quite tiny. We saw normal, and then finally large is like so. Date and time is pretty straightforward. You do need to manually set your time zone, but you can have the device automatically set the date and time based on the time zone that you select, and then whether you want to use a 24-hour system or not is there. Input method just refers to the keyboard, and this is the default Android keyboard, and here are just some of the options. I won't go too into that, it's pretty standard. Here's another place where you can do screen rotation, the exact same functionality as we saw on the drop-down menu. Okay, so we're now at gesture settings, and you'll recognize some of this through the startup process if you saw in the previous video. But here you can either turn on or off gestures where swiping from the bottom, swiping in from going up or down, which is here on either side, or going back. So with these first two, you actually have a selection of things to pick from. And here's kind of the menu. You can either have none if you want to turn off individual gestures, or you can pick from this list here. And the list is the same regardless of which of these three that you're selecting. You also have some options here. These are basically kind of like scroll sliders. You've got volume, warm, or cold light. And again, that's the same on both. And then back is the only option you have if you swipe in from the screen. You can have a device password. That can either be a password or using the fingerprint reader. If you use the password, apparently you need to have an account. So just something to be aware of. Google service, you don't actually have to sign in on this. I've signed in on the Google Play app. I have various apps like Google News, and they're all attached to my account. So this isn't necessary to sign in here, but you can. You have an account manage here, which is where you can connect to OneNote. I've used this in the past with other devices, and I don't find it particularly useful. But if you do bind your account, it takes your Notes apps and it saves it as an image in OneNote. You cannot edit that image, so just be aware of that. System update is pretty straightforward. You can check for updates. Yay, we're up to date. If you have any issues that you have with the device, you can submit a log through this option. And the on-screen keyboard is pretty responsive. So I'll just type in here. You can see it's pretty good. But if you're going to do something like a log, you're probably going to want to connect with a Bluetooth keyboard. And that's something that we'll take a look at in the next video and see how well that works. But this is where you would submit reports, and then finally about the device is pretty much where we started, that talks about the device. And those are all of the settings. Okay, at this stage we've gone through all the UI settings. We can now focus on the applications themselves. And I'm going to go ahead and walk through most of these applications and just take a quick look at what they are and what they can do. We're not going to go exhaustively into all of these, of course, and then some of these actually we'll cover in a little more detail in the next video, but I want to just at least do a survey. We'll start off alphabetical. We've got app management over here, and this is actually a little bit extraneous in my mind. There are a number of utility features available in this app, but you can just as easily go on to any app. Like for example, let's say I want to do something with Kindle. If I long press on the Kindle app, I have a couple options, either to uninstall or to click on management. And here you can see what those options are. So this is how I would prefer to do app management, but there is an app that aggregates some of that functionality into one application. There's a browser application. It's a pretty straightforward browser. So not much of note there. There we go. There's a calendar function. And this integrates with the device and the note-taking and the document reading. So for example, if we go back to January, which you'll notice that there are some days that are marked. So let's look at the 30th, for example, which has this dot. So that's telling me that I either had notes that I looked at or used that day, or I might have also had documents. No, that day was just notes. So the notes are there. Now, if I click on any of these notes, it will take me into that note in the Notetaking app. If we had read any documents, and specifically if we had put any type of handwritten annotations or highlighting annotations in, then those documents would be listed here. If those annotations are deleted, then that disappears from this view. And then finally, you have a little kind of a basic sticky note over here. like so. You can write in, you don't have a lot of pen options. You do have some thicknesses, thin, medium, or thick. You have a couple eraser options, like so. And then you can also type in a note. So pretty straightforward. Okay, there is a camera app. It's a very basic camera app. It pretty much has, it's either a picture or video, and it's pretty much point and click. You do have some options around the flash and around HDR. And under settings, those are the kind of the basic settings that you have available to you. The camera on this is an 8 megapixel camera that's located on the back. And it does have a flash, not just in the settings, but there's a flash, as you can see, right there. Okay, continuing the tour of apps, we have a ChatGPT app, and this we'll look at in more detail in the next video. But basically what this is a free access to this AI model. And basically you can do text queries, or you can have text output, or you can, everything's a text query. But you can either get text as an output, or you can get images as an output, and then you can cut and paste those into, say, your Notes app, for example. So we'll take a look at that. I don't know what this app is at all. I'll go ahead and pull it up if any viewer knows what this is referring to. Most of what you see is in Chinese, so can't comment on that. This is an app I downloaded, so we'll skip the downloaded apps from the Google Play Store. I will note, and this is true of all E-Ink note-taking devices that have access to the Google Play Store, that none of these apps really are optimized for E-Ink screens. So your performance will vary from app to app. Reading apps tend to do quite well. Kindle and Kobo do very well on this type of device. Something like Google News with text and images, that does fine too. But when you start getting the other apps, it really is a hit or miss affair. And so you just have to be aware of that. But there is no, limitation, and color actually helps with apps. In black and white, sometimes menus wash out. Color helps with that, but there are certainly a lot of apps that will not work, and you just have to try them one by one. We have a library app, so if you sideload documents, in this case I've sideloaded a few documents. We can see here a PDF file and an EPUB file. You can get quick access into these documents and into the reader. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at that, and we'll look at the reading app. So there's no actual application here in the menu for the reading app. You get into it by clicking on a document. So let's go ahead and click on this PDF document. And now we're in the reading app. I'm going to save this at the end, and we'll go over some of the details of how the reading app operates. Meeting Record is an application that we're going to go into more detail in the next video. But in theory, what it's doing is it's recording audio of the meeting as well, and tying it to the notes that you're taking during the course of the meeting. So we'll take a look at that. Music player is pretty straightforward. You have to sideload audio files onto the device, and then you have a pretty straightforward player. Navigation bar. If I turn the navigation bar on, I get a little icon down here, and if I click on that icon, there's all of these shortcuts that appear. And what you can do basically is customize those shortcuts, or what they call keys, by clicking on the key, and there's a whole list of options that are available, including none. You can turn that off and simplify the ball. But it's basically a shortcut menu to whatever features that you want to put on there. You can change the size of the floating ball. Right now we're in the smallest size. Here is the largest size. If you make changes and you're like, I don't want the changes, I want to go back, you can press this reset button and return that to what it was. And I can turn it off if you don't want the navigation ball. I should point out that you can move the navigation ball anywhere you want. So I'm going to go ahead and hold on to this and just drag it down. And there it is. So it can live anywhere on the screen that you'd like. Okay, next is a Notes app, and we're going to save this for later. So we'll go into that. They do have an Office application, and this is for viewing documents. So this is not an application for creating documents, right? So you can sideload documents in and view them here. You do have OneNote. We'll go into a little bit more detail on that later. There's the ability to scan documents. So we'll click on this. Here's a document that I've scanned. You just click on New, and then just basically take a picture. It's pretty straightforward. We'll do that real quickly. So we've got our document here, and then we'll just go ahead and kind of center it roughly. Don't have to be perfect. Okay, so it's saved the image now. And I have a couple images. Obviously, it's going to save it as an image. That's the first thing it's going to do, and then that's done. And you can see that in the album. You can also do an OCR feature where it will then go through on this image and take a look and convert it to text. So here we go. And then you have the ability to export that text. And I have one document, so I'll just click on that and then confirm. And I can either export this as a PDF or as a text file. So that's the basic idea between the scanning function. Okay, that takes us to the screensaver application. And this is talking about what shows in the screen when you're in sleep mode or powered off. And this is the default image, but you can change that image. And there's a couple ways to do that. One, you can go ahead and select a different image. You can add some text, and then you can move the text around. In fact, you can see it says hello there. That's some text that I had put in there. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Actually, I don't even need to do that. I can just go signature, don't show. But there's also another way to change the screen style, and I'll share that through the Notes app. And I've created a note with an image in it, and if I long press that note and click on that Set Screensaver as Picture, and then I go into sleep mode, there it is. So a number of ways that you can change the sleep screen. We've already talked at length about the settings, so we won't go there. And this is an app I downloaded from the Google Play Store. Storage is basically a way to look at your file system. You can either look at it via these aggregations, like if you had audio files in multiple places, you click this, you can see all the audio files. If you had a storage card, this is where you could click onto that. To click onto the internal storage of the device, you click on this bar. And this is the folder structure you'd see if you connected it to your computer. And in fact, when I sideload documents, I connect via the USB-C cable and then put the documents into this folder. And that's what you see here. Earlier, we saw the PDF and the EPUB files. And there's also a CBR file that we didn't see in the library. And I got to it by going through this particular app. If I click on any of these, that takes me into the reader. So again, we'll do that toward the end of this video. Carrying on to the next page, there's kind of a basic task list guide, pretty straightforward, that's available here. There's a user guide, so you'll notice that there are tutorials, or actually I've cleared most of those out for these videos, but there's a lot of tutorials on this device. And a lot of times you just want to get to what you're going for, and so you clear out the tutorial and then it's gone. If you want to go back, you'll find all the tutorials here in the user guide. So here it is for quick reference. They have a voice translation app, which is what it sounds like. There's a workplace WPS office, which is you can create documents in this application. So if you click on this new file, you have the ability to create a Word, PowerPoint, or spreadsheet. Of course, because you have Google Play access, you can also download the Microsoft equivalents as well. They do have an email client. They have also a photo app. So I have a few photos I've taken with the camera or that I've imported, and those are all located here. So pretty simple application. And that basically is most of the applications. Let's now take some time then to focus in more detail on two of the critical applications that we glossed over, which is the reading application, the writing application, the note-taking application, and then the reader app. And that's how we'll close out the tour. Okay, so let's take a deep dive into the Notes application and see what functionality is available there. So we have a pretty standard layout here. The only way that notes are laid out is in terms of icons. There's no list view for these documents. And this is currently listed in the order of the most recent edited. You can also have a folder view. You can create new folders. There's an existing folder. If I click on that, you see I have one file in there. So it's a pretty standard file process. It's just icon based. Any files or folders I've deleted are here unless I want to go ahead and clear this out. So I can click on this, for example. And now if by long holding a note, I can select all of these. I can either restore or completely delete them, but we'll leave them there for now. Now there is an interesting icon here, which is basically looking at, the language is a little bit misleading. The one on the left is referring to any notes that were taken in the split screen function, and we saw that earlier. The one on the right is referring to notes that were taken with the global handwriting feature. And we'll take a look at that, and again, in more detail in the next video. But if I click on this, so these were the notes that I had in the split screen mode, and you can actually go in and edit them. Note that this is still using that application. This is not the note-taking application. This is that split screen application, because you don't have the same functionality that we're about to see. So let's go ahead and get back out of this. And we'll go home. Notes. Okay. There's a search functionality here. I will be honest, I don't know what it's searching for. I've searched, for example, for titles, and it doesn't find them. I've searched for handwriting, it doesn't find that. So I'm really unclear as to what this is supposed to be searching for. I'll show you, for example, like here's brushes, no content found, but clearly, actually I misspelled brushes. Maybe this is user error. BR. There we go. No. So user error or not, it's not clear what the functionality here is. You do have this little icon to be able to, check notes. This again is very similar to what we saw in the trash one, where we could but here we can either move the notes, export them, or delete them. Let's take a quick look at the export options. Here, I'll select the note. We'll confirm. And so what it does is it by default creates a PDF and it saves it onto the device. Okay. All right. And then finally, you have the ability to create a new note here. Let's go ahead and look into an example of a note so we can see what's available in each notebook. And we'll start over here. So you have the ability to create layers. There's up to 5. I've selected 5 here in this case. And there's a number of options for each layer. You can lock them. You can add a layer if you have less than 5. Or you can delete, or you could change the order. So right now we're on layer 5, and you can see that indicated in the icon there. I can go ahead and bring that down like so to change the order. You'll notice that this layer here exists, but you can't view it because the eye is shut. So if I click on the eye, there it is. And if I click it on again, it goes away. Of course, I can delete a layer and so on. You can also, this is one of 2 places where you can select the template. If we go ahead and select that, there are a number of templates on the device. There are 6 of what they call these office templates. And then I think there are 13, if I remember correctly. Yes, of these, what are called default templates. And your standard line template is this one. That's the one you're seeing on the device, on the Notetaker currently. You'll notice that the lines here are a little faded. It's kind of hard to discern what these look like, but when you do use the template, it's a little, the lines are more prominent. You have the ability for canvas, and so the canvas can come in a couple presets. This is a 1x1 canvas, so everything is on the screen. There's a 1x2, a 2x1, and a 2x2 as well. There's also, though, a different kind of way to create a very large canvas. And let me kind of get out of this workbook and I'll show you what I mean. So actually, we'll take this example. No, I'm sorry, we will create a new workbook. That'll be the easiest way to do this. Okay, so we're in this new workbook. Here we've got these lines in the template. And I'm going to go ahead and go to zoom. And you can see there's a number of zoom features above and a slider. So now I'm going to slide this all the way over to 500%. Now the template will scale accordingly. And we can get rid of that template. So let's go ahead and go to template and go into blank white. So there'll be no template in the background. And now what we have is actually a really large template. So if I scroll, you can see how big that template is. Remember, the options before were 2x2. Well, that would be like this upper corner basically. But here we see that we have a much larger template. So you can actually trick it into doing, well, that's an interesting pen style. A much larger, but it does kind of get a little funky because right now I'm on a pen style for a pen and you can see it looks a little strained. Let's do a ball pen, which is a more precise. Let's take a look at the thickness on that. It behaves differently, so it's not a perfect solution. This is a lot thicker than it would look if it was normal size. In fact, let's take a look at what it looks like normal sized. And there it is. So yes, the canvas styles itself are set up for just going 2x2, but you can trick it into a much larger one, but there are some compromises involved there. Since we're here, why don't we go ahead and click on the lasso function and see what that does. So you can highlight an area. These squares allow you to move, like so. The circle allows you to rotate. And then the X would allow you to delete it entirely. You can copy, paste, or cut as well. And that's the zoom. That's the functionality there. You have the ability to export your notes, and there's a number of ways to do it with a QR code, a pin, or just saving it onto the document as a PDF or ping. If I click on this other, which I glossed over, then this will allow you to share via a number of different applications depending on what you have on the device. If I click on more, there's the ability to do OCR. We'll take a look at that in a second. In theory, you can encrypt the document. You can rename it, and then you can actually toggle some of the finger gestures. I'm going to go ahead and untoggle them so that they're all available. And then finally, you have undo and redo. Let's take a closer look at that toolbar. We won't save this file. We'll go into brushes. So the toolbar brings up a two-part menu. The first part is basically your pen tray, and these 5 are all presets that you can determine on your own. So if you click on this, you can determine which pen style you want, and there are 5 choices, the color and the line width. And you can set any of these 5 as you'd like. This is how they look in action. This is a pen, pencil, brush, and ball pen, all in black. And then here's an example of the highlighter. The highlighter is kind of interesting how that functions. I like it a lot. Let's go ahead and show that in action. So we'll use a different color. So instead of just highlighting as I draw, it'll draw a dashed line and then put a perfect highlighter in its place. Like so. I really like this particular feature, but it's different than, say, a marker where you would actually see the highlighter as you draw. Here, it's just the dashed line, and then the width of it, or height, I suppose, is dependent on how you draw the line, like so. Okay, down below here's an example of the different thicknesses of the line styles. So you can see thinnest to thickest. And this example, this was the ballpoint pen. And then here's some examples just of some of the more popular colors that you can choose from: red, green, blue, orange, purple, and gray. These pop a little bit more if you have front lighting on. So let's take a look at that. There you go. You do have an erase functionality, and there are a number of options. If you click on this twice, a track eraser, a range eraser, or you can do one or all layers. There are additional functions. If we expand this, you can add a page. You can also add a page up here. So if I click on this arrow, this will actually take us to the second page. If I click again, I go to the third page. Remember that I've activated all gestures, so if I swipe, it should add a fourth page. There we go. And I should point out here on the bar as well, if I click on this 4x4 number, it will then show me a preview of what the pages look like, and I can just click on it to return to that page. This is another location where you can change templates, exact same functionality as we saw before. You can insert shapes, and there are 5 shapes to choose from, different line styles, colors, and thickness. You can insert a photo. You can insert a text box. And again, I can either click on this and bring on the on-screen keyboard, or I can type via Bluetooth. Again, we'll show that in the next video. Or I can delete the page. Click on that text box. So, okay. One last thing about this toolbar, I can either get rid of it entirely by clicking on the toolbar icon, or I can attach it to the side by clicking on this icon here, like so. I could change the positioning of this toolbar, and that would change where it anchors to the side when I minimize it. And again, I can collapse this so I only have the pen tray. Let's take a little bit closer look at the OCR. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And what it's going to do is it's going to try to basically take whatever I've written and turn it into text. So we can see here, it generally did a pretty good job. It misspelled highlight there for this page. But if we go to the next page, this is in cursive. This is a test of OCR, and it translates to thin in MTest U OER. And I think this is a fairly accurate representation of how this works. It's not one of the better implementations of OCR. I don't find it to be particularly accurate. But if you did like the output from it, you could, and you had better handwriting than mine, which would help, then you could export that. You could either convert what you've written to text, like so, and then you can export that, and either as a PDF or as a text file. So that's how that functionality operates. And that pretty much is the note-taking app and all the features that are available. Let's go ahead and get out of here. We'll exit and save the file and return to the home screen. Okay, we're going to conclude our tour by looking at some of the features of the reading app. And the reading app is fairly complicated, so I'm just going to do a quick survey of the application. There just isn't enough time to really go into every single aspect of it, but you'll get a sense of what the reading app is capable of as we walk through it. Now, as I mentioned, you won't find an application for the reading app, so there's a couple ways to get to it. My preferred method is to go to storage. We'll go into the documents folder, and now here are our documents. We'll start with the PDF file that we opened earlier. You notice when I click on it, I have a couple options. I can either open with their XReader app, or I can use another app on the device. We're going to go ahead and use their Reader app. And here we are. The first thing you'll notice is that there is a pen tray in the side, and we can customize these items, much like in the note-taking app. Not as many options, however, and the highlighter app will not actually work in this application. I'll show that in a second. But you do have the option of pen, brush, and ball pen. You have colors, and you have line width. Let's kind of make this line width a little bit bigger, and we'll go ahead and write like that. As I mentioned, the highlighter doesn't work. We have it selected, and it doesn't work with this document. This is not a protected document, so I believe this is a flaw in the software. You have your eraser function, and those are the options. So a pretty straightforward tray. If I X this out, I can return to it by clicking on the middle of the document and clicking on this pen icon like so. This is also where I can toggle on and off touch controls. I can do a search, and this is also a place where I'm not clear what the search feature does. I did a search, for example, on the word report in this document, and it didn't find it. So I'm not clear what's going on with the search feature on this device, but I'm not clear what this is supposed to be searching for. You do have a settings button, and this is where you have your refresh modes, which you can also get to, obviously, using your normal e-ink center. And then under settings itself, there are a number of options like where you're exporting files to, what long tap does. You can pick a dictionary, you can add a bookmark. See the icon shows up when we turn that on. We'll go ahead and bookmark that like so. Okay, that shows that we've bookmarked that page. And that was pretty much the extent of it. I think there was, you've got a couple options in terms of how you read and what it displays. If we go back, you'll notice that there are a number of functions down below. There's a table of contents, and that includes, if there was a table of contents, it would show here. That would have to be from the document itself. Here's the one bookmark that I picked, no annotations, and I have my handwriting is selected there. So any page that I have handwriting will be listed. I can select any and delete them. I can change the order and so on. Here you have, if you have a readback function, then that's where you can execute that. This is basically, you can have automatic page turning. So there's the parameters that you have around that. Here are all the pages, or 4 on the grid, and you can change the grid. So you can have a 4x4 grid and display 16 pages at a time. Go ahead and let that load in before we move on. Obviously, we can advance using this slider down below. Let's see, here we have a dark theme, and here we have a light theme. This is your progress bar. You have options to format how the PDF looks. You can pinch and zoom as well. It's a little awkward to use. It's probably better to use this functionality to format the PDF the way you want. Let's take a look at that pinch and zoom function. So not particularly responsive. Here we're paging through. So again, and let's make sure, let me just validate that we are using, yes, normal mode. So it's a little not as responsive. So probably better off using the formatting tool to get the PDF to be just the way you want it. You have the ability to change the contrast. A lower contrast will make things invisible, and a higher contrast will make them make the blacks darker. You do have this kind of navigation option, which they call reflow, and those where you can change line spacing and the font size. You can play around with that. And finally, there's a couple options around split view. You can have the document actually appear twice, side by side. You can have the document in another document, a document in a notepad, and a document in Translate. All those options are there. Let's go ahead and take a look at a different document. That was a PDF we were looking at. Let's take a look at an EPUB file. All the functionality is the same, although in this particular case, the highlighting works. So I can go ahead and use my stylus and highlight as so. I can also hold down the word and then drag like so. And then there are other options that come up now that I've highlighted the document, and those are there. There is a table of contents in this particular document. So if I click on this, then you can see those there, and of course you can hyperlink to those. So I know that was pretty quick glossing over of some of the features, but again, I just wanted to introduce those features. You can spend quite a bit of time actually just focusing on a reading feature, very similar to Books has, although the Books' reading feature is more complicated and has some more options to it. Let's look at one last file. So go ahead and get out of here. We're going to look at this comic book file. The behavior of the reader is a little bit different with the comic book file. Let me go ahead and turn on front lighting so we can see some of the colors better. There we go. So if we click on this in the center, you can see that there's now different options. We still have our touch option. We can do annotations, oddly, and you can select the thickness of the line, the color. You have an eraser feature, a refresh button, and then you can bookmark pages. Like so. Not sure why you'd want to annotate a comic book, but you can. Click on the comic book, you'll see that the features are different. It's a much simpler feature set. We do have a table of contents if there is one. You wouldn't normally expect that with a comic book, so that's unsurprisingly blank. You can, again, do a grid view. In this case, though, it shows all of the pages of the comic book, and you can zip ahead to that, like so. Here's the progress bar. You can play around a little bit with the orientation and the contrast. And then this is your refresh settings, and it's currently on Regal. So this is kind of a summarized mode again of the E-Ink Center. All right, we ran through that reading app, fairly quickly, but again, we could spend, we've spent almost an hour or so on this video already. To go into the reading app would take a lot more time, but at least you have a sense of what functions are available. And that's going to conclude the tour. As a reminder, the point of all this was just to give a sense of what's available on the device, what the device can do. And then as we went through that, you probably had a little bit of sense of the performance as well. But in the next video, we're going to start going into a deeper dive into some of the apps, for example, the meeting record, the ChatGPT, OneNote, and global handwriting. So we'll look more deeply in those apps. We'll look at the battery life. And so just take a deeper dive on certain key functions. And then the final video will be the full review. So I hope I'll see you there. And until next time.